Good morning, class. It's April 22nd, and it is my favorite day of the year, my favorite holiday that's celebrated across the globe. It's Earth Day, guys. Earth Day 2020, I've got some exciting news for you guys. Um, it's their 50th anniversary. How cool is it that we get to celebrate Earth Day on the 50th anniversary? So, what are we going to talk about in this lesson today? Well, first, we're going to go over some topics in regards to just some fun facts about Earth Day. Where it all began, where was this voice of concern? We're going to take the steps that took us to where we are today. We're also going to look at the most underrated Marvel character of all time, which is Captain Planet, right? We're going to go over some things about the EPA and big data, right? And we're going to talk about the Climate Action Plan because how could you not? And we're also going to talk about climate action today. And lastly, we'll cover your assignment, which is to create a Earth Day poster, right? Because why not? We're going to celebrate it in our own voice and own words. So let's go ahead and jump in. I have this great little character dude here to celebrate Earth Day. It was first celebrated in 1970, and today it includes 193 countries. And what we are doing is to demonstrate our support for the environment and its protection. And not only that, but it also is a protection for people as well. So let's jump to our first topic, some fun facts. Statistics show that, the first Earth Day, like I said, was 1970, but today over 1 billion people are active in celebrating Earth Day. And again, it's over 193 countries, and that whole idea is growing, right? Fun facts, quick fun facts, right? First Earth Day, again, April 22nd, 1970. Earth Day was recognized worldwide by 1990. That's right, guys. It's because of the World Wide Web, right? So the very first Earth Day had 20 million gatherers. That's only 10% of the American population in 1970. And it was a protest of the Industrial Revolution, right? Every year on April 22nd, men, women, and children collect garbage, plant trees, clean up coral reefs, show movies, signs, petitions, and we're just all planning for a better future because we need to act. I know that we can't really go out and explore and be with our friends and family, but we can still be conscious about the things that we are doing in our own homes to conserve energy, right? Gaylord Nelson founded Earth Day. We're going to talk about him later. And he was working as a U.S. Senator for Wisconsin. Earth Day was originally named by the UN in 2009. And it was as the International Mother Earth Day. We'll also be talking about Gaia. Again, the most underrated Marvel character of all time. On Earth Day in 2012, more than 100,000 people rode bikes in China to reduce emissions and save fuels. By the way, because we're all staying home and staying safe, we've actually really helped cut down on those emissions. If it's been colder or you've had like unusual weather or like in the South, I'm typically in like dying of heat. Like I'm just sweating. It's not the case right now, and it's very interesting to think about. And I think NASA actually has some photographs of like our ozone layer right now. Back on topic. In an Earth Day celebration 2011, 28 million trees were planted in Afghanistan by Earth Day Network. And one of the last little fun facts here, in Panama, 100 endangered species of orchids were planted and maintained to prevent their extinction in honor of Earth Day. Because that's what it's all about. It's about preventing extinction, thinking about our environment, making sure that our Earth is healthy. We have clean air, we have clean water in America and across the world. Just want to make that note. And that we're all just enjoying nature, right? So, where did this voice of concern begin? Like, why did we even start thinking about this environmental consciousness, where we're putting this environmental concerns to the very front page. I have a little video here. We won't watch in this video, but I'll post the link here. It was the newscast by CBS in regards to the announcement of Earth Day. You guys should definitely take a moment to take a look at that. So we were concerned about the state of our planet, the voice of emerging public consciousness about pollution, right? What is going on? You know, we're just doing all these little things, and Americans were consuming vast amounts of leaded gas through massive, inefficient automobiles, right? And we have regulations against those things now. We were just billowing and belching out smoke with little awareness to how it was actually affecting us, right? And there weren't any laws or consequences for doing so. Air pollution was commonly accepted, and just the environmental concerns and how we were creating pollution and threats to not only the environment, but human health just was never really thought about. However, Rachel Carson is a lady that you should know. She published a book in 1962. It was New York's best-selling time novel called The Silent Spring. It sounds very nice, but it really told a dark tale about what we have been doing to our environment and how it was affecting people. She took 4 years to collect data and information, and she wrote this book on this chemical called DDT. I will not even try to pronounce the full name here. But this book kind of represents the watershed movement. It sold over 500,000 copies in 24 different countries, right? And her whole message was to raise awareness for living organisms, our environment, and the links between pollution and public health, right? So her big book was against DDT. And it is a colorless, tasteless, almost odorless crystalline chemical compound that was developed as an insecticide. And it's really infamous for its environmental impacts and is no longer accepted by the EPA. We don't use it anymore. So Silent Spring, one of her most haunting chapters in this book is A Fable for Tomorrow. And it kind of depicted what the DDT was doing in regards to this nameless American town, right? Where all life from fish, birds, to apple blossoms, to even human children had been silenced by the insidious effects of DDT, right? So what they found was that over time, this chemical was finding its way into the food chain. Who would have thought, right? Well, it wasn't thought about back then. She studied this. So what happened is that, you know, the bugs would be eaten by animals. The animals would consume the bugs. The nutrition would go into the fatty tissues of animals. And it would also seep in through our skins, and it would sit there, and it caused like cancer and genetic damage. And it was just a really sad little chapter. This is actually a really great book. You should consider adding it to your summer read this year. But this book really brought everything to the front page, right? For the first time, the need to regulate industry in order to protect the environment became widely accepted, right? The environmentalists were born from this book. All right, so we're going to talk about the steps that took us here. We're going to do a little bit of bouncing around here, but I got some really great information for you guys. So some of the first steps that took us there, and we kind of glossed over Senator Gaylord Nelson, a junior senator from Wisconsin. And in the 1970s, he wanted to infuse this energy for the students' anti-war protests. And with the emerging public consciousness about air and water pollution, he wanted that same energy. So what did he do? He recruited Dennis Hayes, a young activist, to organize the campus teach-ins, right? So they chose April 22nd, a weekday falling between like spring and break and final exams, and it helped really maximize the greatest number of students to actually participate and attend. So, like I said, Earth Day inspired 20 million Americans at that time, which was 10% of the total population, right? Here's a really great historic photo from this movement, right? And what did Earth Day do? Like, what are all these hippies up to, right? They weren't hippies, they were environmentalists, right? So by the end of 1970, the first Earth Day led to the creation of the United States Environmental Protection Agency. Thank you, EPA. And it was the first patch. They wanted to first create their passage for the first of its kind for environmental laws, right? And here's kind of a list of some of the things that they pass, right? So the National Environment Education Act, the Occupational Safety and Health Act, Clean Air Act, and then 2 years later, they passed the Clean Water Act. A year after that, Congress passed the Endangered Species Act. Soon after, the federal insecticides, fungicides, and rodenticides. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Probably did not. But we were really involved. We were starting to really get the gears going into thinking about our planet. What are we doing? What do we want to do for it? And how do we want to preserve things for tomorrow? So what happened in the 90s is we had the World Wide Web, our internet, your Wi-Fi, right? And it kind of helped bring people together and mobilized over 200 million people in about 141 countries that were lifting environmental issues onto the world stage, right? It was a great movement. In 1992, the United Nations Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, and the president at the time, Bill Clinton, he wanted to award Senator Nelson the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which, by the way, is the highest honor given to a civilian in the United States, for his roles for Earth Day and being the founder and getting this movement rolling and just being conscious about not only himself, but thinking about others too. And one of my favorite things that has had a really big impact on my life in the 90s, growing up as a young child, is one of the most underrated superheroes of Marvel, right? Captain Planet. He's the best, guys, and you should know who he is. So, Captain Planet and the Planeteers is a Marvel comic from the 1991 to 1992. And his idea was to express that in the real world, it's up to us, the mankind, to make collective efforts towards saving our planet. His favorite catchphrase, and mine as well, is "The power is yours, yeah," because it is. It is all of our responsibility. And so Captain Planet's name was Gaia, which really translates to Mother Earth herself, right? And Gaia is the spirit of the planet, right? And he assembles this a diverse team of planeteers who are able to combine their powers to summon the elemental warrior, which is Gaia, right? And he works with the planeteers to defend Earth from pollution caused by criminal villains. But yeah, all these planeteers had these awesome colorful rings. They would shoot them up in the air and say, Earth, fire, wind, heart, and all the things. And then Captain Planet would appear and save the day, right? His theme song was that he was going to take pollution down to zero by defeating these villains. And the animated series was co-created by Ted Turner and a noted environmentalist. So that's what I really grew up watching. However, the art illustration from Marvel is fantastic, as all of his comics in that are. So some of the villains we have here is Duke Nukem, very creative, Luton Plunder, and Hodges Greedley. I love those names. But those definitely weren't the only villains, right? So this show taught us that threats to the planet often stem from human greed and exploitation of power, right? And this big takeaway is that we may not have magic rings to summon the crystal blue-skinned hero, Gaia, Captain Planet, but we do have something, and it is the power of technology. which kind of brings me to something I want to just briefly mention. If you are like a podcast lover, you should check out Josh and Chuck from Stuff You Should Know. I love listening to their podcast, but they have some really great things in regards to the power of technology. So they have this podcast called What is the Future of Earth? And they actually talk about technology in that little episode segment. So you guys should definitely check that out. But we're going to move back into how the steps that took us there. We love Captain Planet. Like I said, you should take a moment and look at some Captain Planet stuff. But after the 90s, we're hitting the new millennium. It's 2000, baby, right? Citizens around the world wanted a quick, decisive action on global warming and clean energy. We do not want to wait around. And we just don't like waiting, right? Honestly. And I don't want to wait till I'm 80, which is a long time from now, by the way, for things to actually progress. I want them today. I want them tomorrow. I want things moving and in action like we've been doing. So 5,000 environmental groups is in a record of like 148 countries, reached millions of people on Earth Day. And what this did was it built both global and local conversations. So we were chit-chatting, having a good time. We were getting on the same page, right? We wanted to start leveraging power of the internet to organize activities around the world and activists, right? While also featuring during this like big event in 2000, there was this great featuring drum chain that traveled from Gabon, Africa, and it went from village to village in celebration of the earth. Right. And hundreds of thousands of people also gathered on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. for the First Amendment rally. Right. It was really great. Earth Day is fantastic, and it's only getting better. Earth Day in 2010 hit, and things were starting to get a little clouded, right? There were climate change deniers. We had well-funded oil lobbyists muddying up the pockets of our politicians, and there was just this whole disinterest in the public and defending the environment and our health, right? And all this discourse started to kind of divide environmental communities. But with the collective power of global environmental activism and the Earth Day Network was born, right? And that brought everyone back together, right? It created more unity, and it brought hundreds of millions of people into the environmental movement. And it was creating opportunities for civic engagement and volunteerism in 193 countries, right? In 2010, Earth Day engages more than 1 billion people every year to this day, and the numbers are climbing. And it's become the major stepping stone along a pathway of engagement around protecting our planet. So having this Earth Day network really helped bring everyone closer together through communication. But before we move forward to what we are doing today, right? Like, what's Earth Day like today? Let's talk about some big data. I've got a lot of notes here in your classroom notebook, and I'm just going to gloss over some of this stuff. So remember, the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, was founded December 2nd, 1970. Their mission, and you can find this on their website, is to protect human health and the environment. And they have this lovely little icon here, lovely design for their logo. But also what was created was the Federal Data Center Consolidation and Initiative, right? That's a lot of words, the FDCCI. And what this was is that it was a consolidation of big data and infrastructure. And all this together helped reduce the carbon footprint. And we've also saved a whopping like $2.8 billion so far because of these efforts and this big data. Big data, what does it do? Well, it helps to find this kind of solution for applications, right? So we're tracking climate change, we're monitoring water quality, and what we're doing is we're taking this information and saying, great, we have the data, what do we need to fix? Because obviously our mission is to protect the environment and people's health. And if we're not doing that, and if data is proving that against what our mission is, then we need to change some things, right? And before we move forward, the EPA has made some wonderful infographics. I mean, we're just going to gloss over this section, right? So what is big data doing? What is the EPA up to with all these organizations? Well, they're helping to protect the environment, and they're collecting this information so that we can efficiently screen things and have these checks and balances and making sure that we're all aligned with protecting the environment, protecting human health, right? So some hit topics that big data does is toxicity and chemicals, right? So we have this research program, we're collecting data and how these various chemicals have this impact in the environment. And we're starting to rank these different chemicals in respect to their pose to the environment. And did you know it wasn't until 1983 that we actually started labeling explosive chemicals, right? That's kind of wild. But also big data is helping us to monitor power plants, right? We're making sure people are being held accountable. So we have the Federal Data Warehouse, which contains information related to companies in the power industry. And we're determining the performance of power, right? And we're looking at the parameters of like their greenhouse gas emissions, their carbon footprint, renewable portfolios, standards, and we're making sure that everything lines up and checks out. We're checking out air pollution. We're collaborating with NASA and efforts to collect air quality data. What is our primary source of pollution too? And we're going to study those different emissions together. And with big data, it's going to really help us to better understand its impact. Earth observation. This was a fun little database. So it's the Global Earth Observation System of Systems. Clever name, guys. Formed jointly by a group of international governments and organizations, they wanted to gather real-time environmental data, right? And it helps us to quickly respond in cases of natural calamities or other disasters triggered by human activities such as like sinkholes, earthquakes, tsunamis, forest fires, and all those different attributes that we are contributing to. And we're improving our emergency response and ecosystem monitoring activities. Big data is helping us look more closely at oil dumping, right? And not just in regards to what I have here, but, you know, these giant oil companies that have these tubes running across our lovely lands in the nation. They're busting open, they're pillowing out oil. You know, big data is really helping us to evaluate how vast and how detrimental of an impact it is to our environment. A really great positive thing that big data helped with that is that New York caught over 95% of their restaurants that were using cooking oil and dumping it illegally, right? And big data didn't just help bust those particular restaurants, but it helped the New York's Department of Environmental Protection find like a solution to the issues of clogged drains and just finding other avenues for these restaurants to safely dispose of their oil, right? So we're not just busting people, we're finding solutions too. We're also taking big data to look at earthquake monitoring, which is used to develop systems that can trigger warning signals for us in advance. We also have big data on climate simulation. So we're working with our NASA center and we're checking out the weather and climate data and creating significant simulations of climate change and what we're looking at from the past to the future. I'd like to make another quick little shout out about climate change. Another podcast, I just like listening to them, is from Stuff You Should Know, Josh and Chuck. This one was a really recent one called Did Climate Change Cause the Collapse of the Mayas? Really great listen. So if you're bored out of your mind, you're tired of listening to, you know, your Netflix and you've drained out all the things you could binge watch, maybe just listen to a podcast. Anyway, back on topic. big data has really helped us to check out deforestation, and helps us to minimize the cutting of trees, but also suggests eco-friendly alternatives. Did you guys know that bamboo is a great alternative of construction material that is widely underrated? It can grow to maturity in just under 3 years. It's flexible, it's bendable, and it can really last a lifetime. So clearly, big data and analytics are among the biggest technology tools we have in contributing to environmental causes and sustainability. But we can't just rely on government agencies and private organizations to undertake environmental projects. We still have a long way to go, and it takes everybody contributing. And that's what Earth Day is all about. It's about the we, not the me, but it's about the I taking initiative, right? So let's talk about Climate Action Plan, because how could we not cover this, right? So if you guys kind of remember in our small little timeline, we had Earth Day in 2000, and in the 90s, we're starting to get connected through the internet, World Wide Web. We have the Earth Day network that was created, and Obama wanted to take things to the next level of bringing it to the front page, right? So his action plan was announced in June 25th of 2013, and it was called Taking Action for Our Kids. So here's a little excerpt from that. Taking an all-of-the-above approach to develop homegrown energy and steady responsible steps to cut carbon pollution, we can protect our kids' health and begin to slow the effects of climate change so we leave a cleaner, more sustainable environment for future generations. That was the mission, and it's a great mission. So if you don't know Barack Obama, you should. He's our 44th U.S. president. And this was just some information straight from the press secretary's office, right? There's some really great charts that are on that website. They kind of show what we have done so far in regards to this act and this plan. There is a really great little video you guys need to watch, and it's called The President Obama on Climate and Energy. It's not a very long video. I think it's about 7 minutes long. We won't watch it here in this video, but you should take the time. So what were the goals, right? Let's just quickly gloss over these things. You guys can read this on your own. So we wanted to cut carbon pollution, right? So we wanted to cut it by 32% from the levels that we had from big data in 2005, and we want that to be our goal for 2030. I think we can do it way sooner, right? We want to expand clean energy and the economy through that. So he provided more than $90 billion in strategic clean energy investments and tax initiatives. And now you see all over your neighborhoods, you know, people that have solar panels because the cost kind of went down for everybody. And he also became the lead global efforts to climate change. So they went to the Paris Agreement and established long-term, durable global frameworks that everyone is going to be held accountable for, right? Another goal was protecting our climate, our air, and our water, right? So we had national limits for mercury, arsenic, and other toxic air pollutants emitted into the air by power plants. His goal was to cut energy waste. So he challenged and enlisted cities, states, utilities, manufacturers, schools, districts, and businesses to improve energy efficiency. I know that my power source, Georgia Power, they have listed that, you know, some of the best ways to save energy is in the summertime, keeping your air, I think it's on like 78, and in the winter 68, and that's what I have it on all the time. And I know that, like, for my school district, we have a lot of our light switches that are motion activated, so I don't have to worry about cutting on and off the light. If I walk out of the room, no one's in there, things turn off. All the lights are off in my house unless I'm in that room too. So just think about different things that you can do just at home while we are staying safe in shelter. he also, his goal was to not only change all these things, but also prepare our communities for the impact of climate change, right? He wants to have a task force to advise the administration on how to better support communities preparing for climate change, and then also help prepare communities that, you know, are going to possibly lose jobs in these large power plant or oil companies as we are changing things, providing education resources and assistance for the easy transition, right? And he also wanted to protect the treasured national resources, right? So what he did was he protected more than 550 million acres of American public land and water, more than any president in history. And I just think that's wonderful. This plan, Climate Plan Act, was just great. But there's still a lot of work ahead, right? He asked each of his cabinets to write an exit memo on the progress we've made, their vision for the country's future, and the work that remains in order to achieve that vision. So we can't lose sight of how far we have come and say, that's it, we're done, we did great, guys, pat people on the back, because it's not over, and it's never going to be over. We're always going to need to protect the planet, right? The power is yours. And as this says here at the bottom of your notes for this page, that pollution is contributing to higher rates of asthma attacks and more frequent and severe floods and heat waves. So we have done a lot, but we still have a long way to go. Okay? So always keep that in mind. But because of Earth Day, things are changing. So let's talk about climate action, right? So it's a citizen science initiative, and the Earth Challenge 2020 will help fulfill our goal of engaging millions of global citizens while integrating billions of data points from new and ongoing citizen projects. So they're taking all these things, all these different organizations, big data, compiling it into one, and then saying, hey guys, the power is yours. Come and help us, right? So Earth Challenge 2020 is an activation. We are working to help set up the infrastructure of citizen science communities and technologies that will be live beyond 2020. So their plan here is to have you guys take your phones and document places as you're going around. Do you see litter? You know, they want everyone to help compile data, because data really helps us better understand how to tackle problems. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little segment about Earth Day and its history and why you guys should be really excited to participate in Earth Day. Remember, Earth Day can turn into Earth Week, Earth Month, Earth Year, Earth Life. That's a nice little catchphrase I just made up there. I'm going to copyright that one. Anyway, here's your assignment, right? Earth Day poster assignment. Even if you're not in my media arts class, you know, feel free to do this for yourself as well. Here's the assignment, right? Create a poster for Earth Day using large letters, few words, and artwork that communicates meaning, okay? So think of a short saying, right? Maybe something that I just said a couple seconds ago. Tell the public what you want to say in as few words as possible, right? Because you've got 30 seconds or less to attract people. Think about those 11 rules of composition that we've gone over before. How are you going to attract? How are you going to create interest? How are you going to deliver your message? Because no one cares about your message until you create interest, and you have to attract people first, right? So in our Earth Day assignment here, you guys are also thinking about those rules of compositions. You need to use at least 4 of the 11. However, try and consider all of these and how they apply together. Your theme is up to you. It's open-ended. Any aspect for this cause of saving trees, protecting wildlife, recycling. Maybe you want to talk about big data, and maybe you just want to talk about the event here. So what words do you want to say? What messages do you want others to hear? It's up to you, right? Your size requirements here are going to be 18 by 24, which is a nice little standard poster size. If you're using Canva, you can just select the poster size option and create a blank new document. And you have to use the hashtag Earth Day 2020 in your poster design. So here are just some little design ideas that I was able to collect here. And I hope that you found this video segment on Earth Day exciting. I'm really excited to celebrate Earth Day with all of you guys. It's Wednesday, April 22nd, 2020, and have a great afternoon, guys. I can't wait to see your all's posters. Miss Nessie signing out.